All right, let's dive right into this. Have you ever walked through your own city and just wondered why it feels the way it does? Like, why do some neighborhoods feel like these incredibly vibrant, connected communities, while others, even though they're perfectly paved and brand new, just feel kind of isolating and cold? Well, today, we're going through an explainer based on Dr. Ahmed Mansour Al-Mosalamy's comprehensive framework for modern city planning. And what's super fascinating here is that it's uniquely built upon traditional Islamic principles. We're going to see how applying ancient wisdom to modern blueprints completely flips how we view the concrete jungles we live in. Just take a look at the visual identity of the source material itself. The cover literally bridges the gap between past and present. You've got this stunning, intricate geometry of ancient Islamic architecture placed right alongside sleek, modern, towering cityscapes. It's honestly a perfect visual metaphor for the author's core argument, that the foundational rules that guided historical, deeply connected societies, they aren't just relics of the past. They're actually incredibly relevant and honestly desperately needed for modern urban planning today. So, on our agenda today, first, we'll look at urban planning in Islam. Second, the principle of warding off harm. Third, an evaluation of Minya. Fourth, we'll examine the social entity and religion. And finally, the residential distribution crisis. Let's get into it. Section 1. Urban Planning in Islam. The Foundational Theory. So Islamic urban planning isn't just about, where to place roads or exactly how tall a building should be. It is fundamentally built around protecting major life goals. According to the source material, a city's design absolutely must actively work to preserve three vital things: preserving religion, preserving life, and preserving wealth. If a city's master plan doesn't support those core human needs, well, it's considered fundamentally flawed. To analyze exactly how well a city actually protects these goals, Dr. Al-Mosalamy's framework divides the whole thing into four distinct, measurable entities. We've got the urban entity, the social entity, the economic entity, and the environmental entity. By breaking the city down like a giant puzzle like this, the author gives us a really clear, structured roadmap for our analysis. You see, you can't just look at buildings in a vacuum. You really have to see how those physical structures interact with the people, the economy, and the environment. Moving on to Section 2, the principle of warding off harm, the core lens of the study. Okay, so the absolutely crucial point here is this. Warding off harm takes precedence over bringing benefit. What does that actually mean when we're talking about urban planning? It means avoiding negative impacts on the community is actually way more important than creating new conveniences. Think about it. Imagine a city planner proposing this massive multi-lane highway that cuts right through a quiet residential neighborhood. Sure, it brings a benefit by speeding up crosstown traffic by, say, 10 minutes, but under this framework, the harm it causes, literally destroying the social fabric, adding massive noise pollution, endangering pedestrians, that harm far outweighs the benefit. The harm must be warded off first. Seriously, think about how that rule applies to the design of your own neighborhood. Section 3. The evaluation of new Minya, a practical case study. Now, theory is great and all, but seeing it applied, that's where the real learning happens. This study takes a strictly analytical look at New Minya City's urban master plan. For our purposes today, we're zooming in specifically on the social entity of this new city. The author evaluates exactly how well this development's design adheres to that golden rule we just talked about, the principle of warding off harm, specifically when it comes to the social lives of its residents. Section 4. The social entity and religion. Preserving the core. Under the social entity, the very first thing we look at is how the city supports the preservation of religion. Now, in this specific framework, we're not just talking about some abstract spiritual concept. It is deeply grounded in physical urban spaces, specifically through the placement and the day-to-day function of local mosques within these neighborhoods. This is just brilliantly illustrated in the text. It says, the mosque plays a daily role in achieving social cohesion among residents, acting as a daily social meeting point. So in this urban planning framework, a mosque isn't merely a religious center meant for isolated worship, right? It's strategically designed to be this vital daily social anchor. It's literally the place where neighbors cross paths multiple times a day, where local news is shared, and where the community just naturally stays connected. By structurally guaranteeing a daily meeting space, it effectively wards off the harm of social isolation. And that brings us to Section 5, the residential distribution crisis. When master plans fail the community. However, the study doesn't just praise the theory, it uses the framework to identify very real problems. When evaluating how residents are distributed across the different neighborhoods in New Minya, The author uncovers what he calls a significant issue, a full-blown crisis in residential distribution. The analysis points out a pretty stark contrast. You see, the new Minya City master plan grouped people entirely by their economic level. They created these distinct zones, labeling them as social housing, average income, and above average or distinctive income areas. But the Islamic planning principle requires a holistic mix of social, professional, and cultural compatibility to form a real functioning neighborhood. The study draws a real hard line here. It states that placing people in neighborhoods like New Minya's 1st, 2nd, or 7th districts based solely on how much money they make creates an incredibly unstable community. I mean, just because you and your neighbor have the exact same size paycheck does not mean you have any social, cultural, or professional common ground at all. The framework argues that this purely economic zoning actually causes harm. It leads directly to the fragmentation of the social fabric, creating these sterile environments where neighbors barely interact and communities just fail to organically form. Warding off this social fragmentation absolutely should have taken precedence over the administrative convenience of sorting people by income. Bringing it all together, the author concludes that true urban development has a strict order of operations. You can't just build a bunch of houses and cross your fingers, hoping a community magically forms inside them. No, the framework demands that we must prioritize social and economic development first. We have to actively build community compatibility way before we ever pour the concrete for the physical structures. The physical city should essentially be a shell that perfectly encases and supports a pre-existing, carefully considered social structure. It really makes you look at the streets outside your own window a bit differently, doesn't it? As we wrap up this explainer, I want you to ask yourself, how does the design of your own city affect your daily interactions? Are you isolated by economic zoning, or are you actually living in a space designed to ward off the harm of disconnection? It's a pretty powerful lens through which to view the spaces we call home. Thanks so much for exploring this with me today.